Good afternoon. We will begin in about 60 seconds. I'm allowing persons to come into our webinar today. My name is Scott Phillips, and I am the director of the MBDA Advanced Manufacturing Center in Baltimore. And welcome. Good afternoon and welcome to the MBDA MiHUB Monday for April, on this April the 24th. And thank you for joining us. And I need to also say thank you to our participants for your patience. We are starting 30 minutes later than normal, but hopefully you will understand that it had somewhat of a good reason. I am in Annapolis today, and it's very fitting on this, our legislative wrap-up session, because we had a number of bills that were signed into law today at a ceremony in Maryland State House. Behind me, you see the floor of the General Assembly for the state of Maryland, and I'm excited about our topic today and the interest that we've had in receiving kind of a legislative wrap-up. So today we're going to talk about advocacy and the impact on our state houses on business, the opportunities that have come out of the most recent legislative session here in Maryland, and some of the things that we can look forward to in the future. We're also going to spotlight one of our clients. I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to have with Kendrick Tilghman, 5 Star Enterprises. But before we get to our show today, I want to remind folks of a few things. And once again, welcome to MiHUB Monday. The MBDA Advanced Manufacturing Center is operated by the City of Baltimore and funded by Minority Business Development Agency, Department of Commerce. As part of our organization and affiliated with our organization is the Manufacturing Innovation Hub Cooperative. And I always like to take this first couple of moments to introduce our audience to the co-op and what it is all about. So the co-op is assisting us with both identifying minority manufacturers, but also providing additional resources to those manufacturers. It is a member-owned and operated in a democratic fashion entity where the members share in each other's successes and support each other in their growth. And so for those who are interested in learning more about the co-op, please visit mihubcoop.com. That's MIHUBCOOP.com. Now, let me tell you about our guest today. We're going to start first with Kendrick Tilghman. Kendrick is the owner and operator of 5 Star Enterprises. He does a number of things, but one of the things that we're really excited about is his work with young people and a product that he has developed to get young people engaged and interested in STEM. Kendrick also, this legislative session, served as an advocate for a bill that would positively impact the minority business community. And I'm going to give Kendrick an opportunity to talk about that. Following Kendrick, we have 3 gentlemen who are no strangers to the legislative process, who collectively, along with a number of other people, advocated on behalf of a bill to provide funding and support to engage small manufacturers in Industry 4.0, and I won't steal their thunder. And those individuals are Mike Kelleher, who is the leader of the Manufacturing Extension Partnership in Maryland, MEP, Mike Galiazzo, Dr. Mike, who is the leader of the Regional Manufacturing Institute of Maryland, and then finally, Reinhardt, who is a lobbyist who has served in Annapolis for a number of years. So they'll each be given an opportunity to provide more information about themselves and the work that they have been doing over the course of the last 90 days here in the Maryland legislature. So I'd like to start this session with our client spotlight and Mr. Kendrick Tilghman. Kendrick, will you join me?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Hey, Kendrick, how are you today?
I'm doing phenomenal, actually. It's an amazing ride to be living in your dream. It's a dream.
Living the dream as an entrepreneur and making a difference in the lives of people every single day. Kendrick, you and I have known each other a long time. I'm really excited about the opportunity to work with you as a client of the MBDA Center, but also really impressed with your efforts. And I will say efforts. I know we may not have gotten to the finish line, but you could talk about that as well. So Kendrick, why don't you share a little bit about 5-Star Enterprises and some of the work that you've been involved in general, some of the successes that your business has experienced and your work with young people.
Amazing. If you could spotlight me, I have a couple of visuals that I could kind of press a button and kind of give some.
All right, I've got it. I am going to turn you into our host, Mr. Kendrick, spotlight for everyone. There you go.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Kendrick Tilghman of 5-Star Enterprise. We focus on community outreach, educational services, and community engagement. On my end, this is all backwards. So is it straight for you all?
It is straight for us, Kendrick. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just reading backwards right now. Our vision is to be a premier resource for STEM workforce diversity. And so it started just wanting to engage our students, from engagement to employment, from engagement to pursuing a Ph.D. or in some type of STEM field, or from engagement to creating a social entrepreneurship like we are. And so, of course, who I am, I'm a husband, a father of two, a grandfather of two, and as you can see, that's our 10-year reunion. We'll be celebrating 12 years with my beautiful wife this year. And so I'm excited to be the president of the Greater Baltimore Black Chamber of Commerce, which is why advocacy is extremely important. We'll talk about that. I also serve as the president of Madam Speaker's Baltimore County African American Cultural Festival. And I serve as the vice president of our good founder, co-founder, Mr. Scott Phillips at Black Professional Men. And I founded our own organization with my wife called the Be More STEM Foundation, Inc., to kind of balance out what we've been doing. And then we're going to talk about being a co-founder of the Digital Bay Center with the legislation that we did this term. And so just a little bit about our competitive advantages. We're first to market with these products to engage young people. Of course, we've been in this work for about 15 years. That's why I say it's like a dream come true. I had a dream that students were excited about STEM the same way they were excited for athletics. And so to see that actually come into play, we looked at how we set up our model, and we realize we're a complement. There's no competition. There's no one that does exactly what we do. And so having to be a way to leverage our relationships in the industry, that comes in handy throughout the nation when we travel the country doing edutainment workshops. And so here are the problems that we look to solve. And so problem one is we found from a federal level, United States is 27th. Matter of fact, it went down to 28th in the world in science, technology, engineering, and math. The second problem is from a state level, we wanted to really keep that engagement higher, as we saw students really not interested in STEM. And then we saw on a local level that we lowered expectations. When we all were in grade school, 70 was passing, 60 was failing. And then they made 60 failing and 50 failing, 60 passing and 50 failing. We said, while we are lowering our expectations, we should change our approach to delivering STEM education. And then we're going to talk about understanding how the power of legislation in once a moment. And so, Scott, you can hold me accountable if I'm running short on time. I can cut right to that legislation. And
no, we're going to continue. Go right ahead.
And so I just want to talk about the solutions that we offer, and that's in the community outreach, that educational services, the community engagement, and of course, advocacy. And so just to talk about the products that we have, we talk about how we engage young people. Product number one is called Math Through Music. And so we all know that principles are few, processes are many. principles don't change. So we're talking part to whole, percentages, addition, subtraction, multiplication, ratios, proportions. All the principles don't change. We just wanted to change the process. Processes are many. So we basically have a product that comes in this duffel bag. It teaches you how to DJ using mathematical principles. And we would love your network to be exposed to this product. And so currently we're board approved for $1 million in Montgomery County Public Schools. That's our biggest client right now. And we've collected data in the last year. And so they said we've lowered altercations, increased attendance, and 50% of their students' math scores went up. So that's why I say I'm living a dream, because this was a dream I had in early 2000 that basketball and the excitement I saw, the energy I saw for sports would be for STEM. Our second product goes right in line with my electrical engineering degree that I got from Morgan State University. It's called the JD Coding Kit. And so students would solder a DJ rig together and then program it, code it to play music. And so we want to get students excited about how important engineering is and what it is. It's nothing more than creating something to solve a problem. And so we like these problem solving skills, and then our students actually be able to create something that they take home with them. And our third product is the Sound Clash Kit. It's the least inexpensive of our our menu, and it's basically the learning the physics of sound and then building their own Bluetooth speaker. And so we're excited about this product because it's really handheld, and so students as young as middle school are able to create this product and have their own Bluetooth speaker. And so, of course, our target market are in threefold. One is universities, because they said that they had dual enrollment programs that students weren't qualifying for. So we want to position our products to be right in line with their need. They said that we need to increase math scores so these students will be able to take dual enrollment while they're in high school. And of course, our sweet spot is 5th grade through 9th grade, the end of elementary, all of middle school. We actually have a goal of touching 1 million sixth graders. And then, of course, the beginning of high school so that we can feed them into dual enrollment. And then our third is nonprofits. They have programming and a captive audience and sometimes have a need for programming. And so those opportunities come where nonprofits actually rent our kits, rent the Math Through Music kits for said summer or said 8-week program. And so with that, I'll move right into the Digital Base Center, and where we want to talk about policy with a purpose. And so the Digital Base Center is a diversity-owned incubator. And so as an incubator, we realized that we want to address the needs where they are. And so we started to follow these steps that I'm basically trying to show you now.
Okay.
And so it started with the research. And so if the research said that we saw some disparity there, we actually saw that the ETC was in the city's budget every year for over 800,000 from 2019 to, from 1999 to 2019. So that was 20 years of opportunity to invest in companies. And so we saw that that was an opportunity to leverage the legislator for growth for minority businesses. And so we were able to really set that groundwork. And then we actually wanted to find elected officials. We met with Madam Speaker, and this was still in 2021 and quarter 4 of 2021. And then so we actually was able to talk to Comptroller Learman, and while she was delegate, and she said, you know what, Kendrick, I can get this, have legislative services pre-file this, because this is a great idea. I think you need to get more community support. And she connected us to everyone in the community of incubators. And so I believe that the point that we really want to drive home is that there is some problems that can only be solved by law. And so we saw that there were opportunities for us to not only continue. Is that the right slide? Is that the same slide? I'm still looking at things backwards. I think that was quarter 2.
Yep. So we're talking about the steps that you took to pre-file your bill, and some of the advocacy work that you did, I guess, in the first quarter of this year, attending opening day of the session and engaging with legislators. Is that where you wanted to go with your conversation?
Yes. And I was trying to follow the actual, let me see if I can pull it up on my.
Well, let me do this because I think this is
Yeah.
we're almost getting to our segue. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this because you had an experience working with legislators and advocating on behalf of the Digital Bay Center and on behalf of minority businesses in general. So share your thoughts in terms of the outcome of that experience and what lessons would you share with other small businesses or entrepreneurs as it relates to advocacy, leveraging legislation as a way to bring resources to your efforts?
Yeah, I wanted to really honor the relationships. Relationships matter more than the physical dollar sometimes, because when you identify an issue that can only be solved by law, you have to find that champion. And so what I was told by actually Senator Hayes, he said, Kendrick, every elected official has something they champion. And so we have to do our due diligence. You can't come with an issue to an elected official and that's not what they champion. And so we did our due diligence to find who champions equity and just really having that conversation about equity. And so we actually started with the home first. And so I know Delegate Scott represents me and my wife here in Randallstown District 10. And so knowing that Madam Speaker, Delegate White, and Delegate Scott, and then Senator Ben Brooks all represent us as constituents in District 10. It starts there. And then we looked at, okay, we have an office downtown, right above Rams Head Live. Who represents that district? And we found that Delegate Brooke Learman, and we found that Senate President Ferguson represented the address of our office. And so it starts with the relationships that are connected and tied to your constituency. And I think that's really important to go home to understand who represents you from your office, who represents you from your home, and then starting to build those relationships. So in that presentation and in our steps, we went to opening day, and you want to go to opening day so that the first time you see your elected officials, you're not asking them for something. And so you want to continue to build that relationship. It was really strategic and how we had a team to come together to even create an event to market this bill. And so the next step was we said, okay, we need to expose this legislation. And so we're going to do an event in Annapolis to make it easy for our elected officials to attend, to contact our community partners, give them some free food, free beverages, all to make them feel comfortable about this new legislation. And so sometimes you got to take that extra step that we actually did, because we're not lobbyists, we're advocates. See, lobbyists have certain things they can and cannot do because they're registered. And so when you're an advocate, you do the same work, but you do it from your heart, and it's passion involved in that. And so you want to see things change, and you want to see things move forward. You have to look at elected officials as partnerships and look at the legislator as a partner to overcome that obstacle or challenge.
Well, I appreciate that. So you have a great deal of passion, and it shows for in the way that you discuss these issues. But it's also a wonderful segue because there is an intersection between lobbyists and advocacy groups. And often that combination of the two helps us to move things along. This last legislative session, Rich Reinhardt, Michael Kelleher, and Michael Galiazzo came together to focus on an economic development industry 4.0 initiative. And I would like for them to join us now as we talk about how does all of this come together? What are some of the issues that were addressed in the 2023 General Assembly in the state of Maryland? And please talk about those things that are very specific to small and mid-sized manufacturers. So to kick us off, welcome Rich, Mike, and Mike. It's the Rich, Mike, and Mike show. Welcome, Rich, Mike, and Mike. And Rich, you've been working in Annapolis for a number of years. And I wanted to kind of segue and ask you, from your perspective, what were the 3 or 4 initiatives, I'll call them initiatives versus bills, that were passed in this legislative session that our audience ought to be aware of? And once again, we're talking about primarily small businesses, minority-owned businesses. Could you share your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Scott. Thank you again for allowing me to be a part of this amazing panel. Again, my name is Richard Reinhardt. I'm a lobbyist in the state of Maryland. I work for Percy Public Affairs. We are located in the National Harbor in Prince George's County. But to Scott's question, I wanted to identify three major bills that came out of the 90-day session successfully that have passed and are now either currently being signed into law by the governor or about to be signed into law by Governor Moore. And let me just first start off with one that's somewhat familiar to this audience because it predates the 2023 session. And we're talking specifically around the state minimum wage. As you know, let me just give a quick little history lesson to all of us on the call. Back in 2019, chapters 10 and chapters 11 of the 2019 legislative acts, the state minimum wage increased. And so that the wage rates for employers with 15 or more employees increased. And there was an incremental stage on when that increased to accelerate the minimum wage up to $15 per hour, when that would begin and when it would actually, get to that pinnacle. As we know in the current law, 15 or more employees would basically see $15 per hour for their employees by January 1st of 2025. Small businesses that had employees of 14 or fewer, that rate would increase and be fully phased in by July of 2026. The law currently also provided that the Board of Public Works could temporarily suspend an increase of the state minimum wage for 1 year between October 1st of 2020 and 2024. That was pretty much the basis of the legislation that passed in 2019, and that's been current law ever since. As we came into this year with the new administration, one of the major themes in Governor Moore's campaign and one of his promises that he delivered in his 90 days was an accelerated rate for minimum wage so that we could see the 15 rate per hour begin starting this coming year in January 1st of 2024. So as we see now, and which was enacted into law, signed by the governor recently, the Senate Bill 555, which is known as the Fair Wage Act of 2023, accelerates the increase of the state minimum wage rate for all employers to $15 per hour beginning January 1st next year. This means that the small businesses that are 14 or fewer, that also includes them. So all employers will be required, mandated under the new law to see that pass and to see that enacted in January. The bill also does repeal the Board of Public Works authority to temporarily suspend a scheduled increase in the state minimum wage rate. So what was current law for the last few years has basically been retooled under the new legislative act that was brought upon by the administration. And within, like I said, 90 days of his administration, he's been able to accelerate that. Now, for some businesses, this means an impact, good or for bad, depending on your business or your perspective. Traditionally, minimum wage has been a proponent by certain stakeholder organizations and the business community, particularly the Chamber of Commerce, the retail associations. This has been a bill that's been a thorn in their side, and they have traditionally opposed these bills. And this past year was no different. We saw the Chamber of Commerce, the Retailers Association, others, come together as their business coalition to talk about the impacts that this bill would have. But even with their opposition, there was such a strong, overwhelming sense from the general public and with inside the administration and other stakeholder communities came forward saying this needs to be done. And one of the most surprising things that if you were to go into looking at the bill itself, the fiscal note that really breaks down the legislation, while the fiscal note does say that this will have a meaningful impact to small business, it also then goes to say that small businesses will likely benefit from an increased economic activity due to the higher wage. So they're saying that while it could be an impact for the employer, there could be almost a wash in a sense that because of the increase, it will keep, I guess, businesses competitive with other businesses in the industry and inside the region. And so through that analysis, and I think through the overwhelming support by a handful of strong advocates, and certainly with the governor being the biggest champion, as Kendrick said, having that champion really, I think, was the solidifier here to see that bill pass.
All right, so we know that, and we're going to probably talk about that a little bit more as we get into some conversations with Mike Kelleher and Mike Galiazzo. You mentioned two other bills.
Yes, I did. So let me jump right into another bill that was introduced by Delegate Vanessa Atterbury. She is the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, and that bill was 781, House Bill 781. Essentially, what this bill establishes is what is called the Equitech Growth Commission and the Fund. Essentially, what the fund and the commission are wanting to basically build on is to basically support economic competitiveness and inclusive growth inside these emerging and advanced industries across the state. And essentially, it's I won't say a comprehensive bill, but it does establish two major things. One, it establishes the commission, and then it also talks about the growth fund. And why is this important for the folks on this call? Well, first off, as I said before, the idea of what this commission is essentially doing is it's going to be looking at, starting as of July 1st of 2025, this group that's consisting of specific memberships and will be staffed by TEDCO. This group will be basically developing an inclusive and a comprehensive long-term strategic plan that sets forth about 10 years of goals to help grow the state's economy through innovation, but also looking at to attracting growth, and then also looking to retain skill sets inside the workforce, and also to help develop a high growth in business. The most important, I think, factors about this strategic plan that will be developed is that the mechanisms that they're looking to include is the participation in the communities, whether it's through the innovation economics, creating pathways for high-paying jobs, and also increasing and expanding wealth in minority communities. Those are the main focuses of what the strategic plan is looking to do over the course of the next 10 years. This plan will basically be put together and submitted to the governor and to the leadership of the General Assembly by next year. So there's a lot of work that's going to be done by the commission, but essentially part of the other half of this bill is that, as I said before, the Equitech legislation also creates what is called the Equitech Growth Fund. This is establishing what is essentially a non-lapsing fund to help support economic competitiveness and inclusive growth in those emerging and advanced industries across the state. And the great thing about it is this is going to be supporting entities, whether it be public or nonprofit organizations like Kendrick's. It's also going to be helping support institutions of higher education and even what is called P3s, which are private public partnerships. The awards or the grants will basically target workforce development and infrastructure that will help to either attract and also retain businesses in the state. The great thing about this legislation that has passed is that starting next year, which will be 2024, the fiscal year 2025, which begins next July, all the way through fiscal year 2033, the governor must include in his annual budget an appropriation of $5 million for the awards for this fund, meaning that it's a mandated appropriation so that every year for the next several years, the governor must include that money to help provide these grants to those emerging technology, innovators and industries to help target those areas of growth for the state. The great thing also that we saw about this bill, and I'll end on this, is that there was such an investment about this legislation that we weren't waiting until next year for funding to be available. Right now, starting in the passage of the fiscal year 24 budget, so the bill that was just signed by Governor Moore a few hours ago, this budget cycle coming up starting July, there will be already $3 million dedicated to the creation of the commission and the fund. So there's already a real galvanized support around this bill, and the state's really putting a lot of support financially into it already, starting this year. So very exciting.
Thank you, Rich, for giving us some background on two bills that we know will impact our community significantly. Now, this third bill I know is of interest both to Mike Galiazzo and Mike Kelleher. So can you tee them up so that they can talk about their experience as advocates in getting our final bill across the line?
Do you want me to finish up with the governor's bill and then?
Oh, sure. That's right. I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
No problem. I know we're so excited about Industry 4.0, but let me just add one other quick piece of legislation I think will be very important for your community here and the members on the call. There's also a bill that was introduced by the administration. Again, another priority bill by Governor Moore. This was created under House Bill 552. It was actually the administration requested this bill, and it was the Speaker of the House that introduced it. This is economic development. This is called Build Our Future Grant Pilot Program. It's called the Innovation Economy Infrastructure Act of 2023. Essentially, this bill is establishing this Build Our Future grant. It's a pilot program, and it's going to be embedded inside the Department of Commerce. And what it's creating is a grant for infrastructure projects intended to support specific eligible technology sectors. What does that mean? Well, under the program, the grant will provide up to $2 million for private companies, nonprofits, local governments, and even universities, and they'll be able to use that funds for various purposes. It is a matching grant, depending upon how much will be awarded under the grant. But essentially, this is a substantial investment that can help provide either startups or entrepreneurs and even private companies that are needing that money to help infuse whatever they're working on. The great thing about this particular bill is that it's targeting certain infrastructure projects in the areas of innovation and specifically around eligible technology sectors. This includes aerospace, agriculture, AI, which is artificial intelligence, biotechnology, cybersecurity, energy, life science, sensor and robotics, and most importantly, which I think is a perfect segue, is advanced manufacturing, which is part of what we're going to be looking at in the next bill with Mike and Mike talking a little bit more about that. But essentially, there is money that's going to be available in the upcoming bill and in the budget itself for this funds to begin, so that once again, there's another opportunity, a third or fourth bite at the apple, if you will, for private companies to find ways to utilize and leverage their dreams, their passions, their businesses through state funds. And this is another vehicle for them to do that.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. So now we'll make our segue, and I was a little premature because I forgot about the Innovation Economic Infrastructure Grant Program. So now we'll make our segue to something that directly, very focused look at how do we provide resources, but not only resources, bring light to a real issue, a challenge in the manufacturing community, which is addressing 4.0 technologies and adapting and adopting those technologies in our smaller manufacturing organizations. Mike Galiazzo, you've been working on this for a couple of years now. And so finally it has come to fruition. So how are you feeling it? Please kind of share that experience in serving as an advocate for our manufacturing community.
Well, I'm feeling great for the industry. And also, Governor Moore talks about big, bold ideas. And back in 2016, The World Economic Forum talked about the importance of the transformation of manufacturing as related to the fourth industrial revolution. So when we say Industry 4.0 technologies, which this bill addresses, we're talking about technologies that are altering the way in which we do work. It's in line with the change that occurred when electrification occurred back around the change of the last century. So these are powerful technologies, from artificial intelligence to digital technologies, the Internet of Things, that are making life much different. And it's part of a transformation movement, which involves technology and talent. So let me just make it real simple for those of you that are on this call who are manufacturers or who care, like Scott Phillips and I and others do, to help manufacturers. It's very simple. We had a legislative work group that was created several years ago. Reinhardt was our lobbyist for that. And that legislative work group made several recommendations, one of which was this bill that we're talking about right now. Part of that process was we looked at other states. It was clear that Maryland is behind and supporting our manufacturing base. And other states have been providing funds for manufacturers to purchase advanced technologies. So what this bill does, really simple, give you an example. If you are a manufacturer in Maryland, a small to medium-sized manufacturers, not for the larger companies, it covers almost all minority manufacturers. Let's say, hypothetically, you want to buy a piece of advanced technology and it's $50,000. Well, this fund allows you to apply for 50% of the cost of that to be covered. It's that simple. It's a matching grant fund. And we've never had, it's an amazing step forward, and it's going to help accelerate what we need to do. Other states have more funds to do this, but this is our first venture into this, and I'm really excited about it. And it puts Maryland in a competitive stance. And when I listened to what Kendrick, we share a good friend in Christine Plater. But you talk about STEM. Back in 2018, RMI had an event in which I declared we had over 700 people in a room, most of them very young kids. And we said, you are our future. STEM students are our future. So I want to thank you for what you're doing. And we're here to work with you and to help you, because as this new advanced technology comes on the scene, we need, quite frankly, STEM students to be part of our workforce.
So, Mike, I think this is a great opportunity for the industry to look at the types of work that Kendrick is doing. We often talk about not having enough young people who are interested in participating in manufacturing, right? Who really see creating things and building things as a career option. And often we kind of say you have to track into this collegiate world. Much of what Kendrick is doing and much of what I've heard you talk about would allow people, if they really embrace this Industry 4.0, to also track young people in a different direction, right? Not necessarily in the same model that we have talked about in the past.
One of the things that people smarter than me write about this, MIT did a report on the work of the future, and they essentially said, look, future work is really going to be tied with technology, that you need to be technologically literate. I don't know how else to say it, if you want to have a well-paying job with benefits. So now what that looks like in terms of an educational experience, I'm not sure. One of the things we need to keep in mind, Scott and others, is that the change that's occurring is occurring at breakneck speeds. There's never been a time in history that we've had to move so quickly to adopt something that we hardly understand in terms of new technology. So I challenge academic institutions to change their models. So Kendrick, what you're doing is a contribution towards helping them to see there's more ways of getting there. By the way, some people, I am an educator. That's my background. My doctorate is in education administration. And I think there's a real need, quite bluntly, bluntly, for higher education to start transforming itself into a system that can deliver learning in ways that works for society as a whole.
So Mike,
Kendrick,
I'm going
you
to
had
ask you
something to
this
say?
question.
I'm sorry.
No, because given everything that's taking place, and we've talked about students and how this training issue impacts on where we're going, maybe you and Rich can talk a little bit about what should we be advocating for, let's say next year. All right, and Kendrick, I'd like you to talk about this as well, because while your bill didn't pass this year, my sense is you've raised awareness in a very significant way. And Mike, you're aware of this too. I mean, this raising of awareness is extremely important. So can either of you guys talk about that?
I can start. I remember running into a parent that remembered me from 30 years ago. She said, "You protected my son." And it reminds me of this slide I'm showing now. If you could put me on,
we have it.
on
I see
spotlight.
it. Yep.
This is what we should all look to understand. You have equal, but then you have equity. And so equal may not all level, equal doesn't always level the playing field. And so when I'm looking at legislation, when I'm looking at what should happen, it's always going to be about leveling some type of playing field that we can all really increase capacity. I mean, honestly, there's so many solopreneurs in the United States, and they're trying to do it, and they're suffering in silence. And so when I look at ways that we can partner with the legislator to help scale, I think that's the ultimate goal that we have, and our focus point is how do we help scale businesses that are suffering in silence and are addicted to their labor by which they earn their primary income. And so having products is one of those ways to scale. And so sometimes they just need that education. You don't know what you don't know. And so for us, it's going to be legislation about leveling the playing field so that opportunities can happen that way.
I like that. I like that. Well, Mike, where are things going with the manufacturing community?
Well, before I answer that, I'd like to just tag on to something that Kendrick just said. In that MIT report, and they did this about 4 years ago on the work of the future, they talked about the importance of technical education, people learning the new technologies, but they also pointed out that women and minorities were going to be proportionally disadvantaged for jobs in the future because they're undersubscribed and technical curriculum in school. And Kendrick, you know, this is particularly true in STEM. So that's a point where where we need to come together, because we need to do more to encourage women and minorities to participate in STEM programs. We know the technology is coming on the scene, but you have to be, you have to have the talent that's educated. I mean, Freeman Hrabowski understands what we're talking about here. I mean, what he did at UMBC was prepare people for meaningful work. In fact, we ought to figure out what he did and make every institution out there follow that. I don't mean to get off on that, but the point is that we need to promote a positive image for women in manufacturing and create pathways for them to more easily access these technical programs.
So Mike, that's what we're talking about, right? And Rich can appreciate this, because Rich, you listen to things like this and you say, okay, if we're going to try to impact minorities involved in manufacturing, it may go beyond an Industry 4.0 grant that provides technology. It may then suggest that we need to do something that directly impacts our K through 12 education or directly impacts higher ed. So Mike, I think you've answered my question in a roundabout way, right? I don't know what it looks like for the manufacturing industry. You've had this success with the Economic Development Fund. So you've had that success. What are the successes that you're looking for as we go forward? And Mike had to drop off for a little while, but he's rejoined us. And I know, Mike, you do a lot as it relates to employment development for manufacturers. So perhaps this is my opportunity to kind of bring you in and ask you the question, what is your forecast for advocacy in the next legislative session here in Maryland? What are those hotbed items that you think we ought to be focusing on?
Yeah, thank you, Scott, and apologies. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty there, but I was able to follow the conversation, and his efforts are remarkable, and what Mike and Rich just shared. The modernization grant program, the technology grant program that we were able to get through this legislative session, we really think is just the tip of the iceberg, right? And now the work is really starting for the manufacturing community. I think as a group, we all agree manufacturing is vital and critical to our economy. But we don't always do the best job of making the most noise to share with our legislators and our stakeholders and our partners of how important we really are for all of the reasons that we covered, right? Not only are we important to our economy, but we're important because it's one of the few industries that provides career pathways to individuals of all backgrounds, right? All education levels, all skill sets. There's something in manufacturing for everybody. And so the more we can tell that story and the more we can create those opportunities, the more we can not only help our industry, but the more we can propel this forward. I know one of the pieces of the 4.0 legislation was the outcome of the working group. And the working group had about a dozen recommendations, and the grant program was really just one of them, right? It was just one piece of it, but aligning our manufacturing careers and our manufacturing job openings with the K through 12 education, aligning it with the skill sets for, populations, underserved and disadvantaged populations, right? The reentry population or returning veterans or, minorities that may not have access to traditional education paths. How do we align the manufacturing needs and skill sets with those populations that aren't necessarily exposed to it? So doing more around that, and then really, proving out and demonstrating what those technologies of the future are and how exciting and cool they are, right? We always talk about it's not your grandpa's manufacturing, and it's not dark and dirty and dingy. Maryland is rich with companies that are doing really cool and really interesting things. And I know the group on the call here have been in plants around the state where you could eat off the floors. That's how clean they are. And there's kids running computers, and there's programming, and there's robots, and there's all of those things that get, everybody excited. We just need to expose more people to that.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, Mike. I had an opportunity to kind of do a tour of a number of locations around the state of Maryland back in December. One, kind of a biotech environment, then went to the production. It's a manufacturing facility, if you will, for cannabis, and then dealing with natural gas vehicles. I mean, we have such a robust manufacturing industry in the state of Maryland that often people are not exposed to. Medical device production, right? So this idea of leveraging perhaps this work group and maybe even requesting some additional money so that we expose our young people to all of these options, to give them a different opportunity. One of the things that we don't talk about enough is that the average salary in manufacturing clearly is higher than a number of industries, right? It's higher than fast food, which a lot of our young people are jumping into fast food because they don't have a number of other options. It's actually higher than hospitality, which a number of young people are jumping into. So we've got to do a really good job of getting the message out. And I think as we continue to get the message out in Annapolis and in Richmond, Virginia, and in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, we will help to improve the number of people that come into manufacturing by choice and not by chance.
Scott, may I add something to what you just said about in February, there were 12,000 job openings in manufacturing in the state of Maryland. So I just think it's important for those job seekers to recognize that not only is it a good paying jobs with benefits, okay, there are job openings, and I'm talking about every type of position out there. So
Mike, that's the message that we've got to keep yelling to everyone that will listen to us. And so I really, really believe that. Well, let me do this because we're at 9 minutes to the hour. And I once again want to say for those persons who hung in here with us for a little bit of a late start today, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing with the MBDA Advanced Manufacturing Center as advocates. One of the bills that was actually signed today is the MBE, Minority Business Enterprise Veteran and Women Scorecard Bill. And that was the reason for the delay. And that bill, similar to federal legislation, which is managed by the Small Business Administration, the SBA, will really look at how each agency in the state of Maryland is doing in terms of its MBE spend. Was really excited, had an opportunity to spend a few seconds with the governor as he signed that piece of legislation. We continue to advocate on behalf of small minority businesses and the manufacturing industry as a whole. So thank you all for staying with us. I'd like to get just a few words from each of you, recommendation, your thoughts on advocacy, because that's the topic that we're working on. I'd like for each of you to share your contact information so people know how to get you, and any last minute thoughts or recommendations for our audience. So Rich, I'll start with you.
Great, thank you again. I would just say a few things on echoing what my panels have said. One, that for anyone who is wanting to advocate in Annapolis, a few things that I think come to mind. And for this particular industry, this is really, you are poised at a very, I would say, pinnacle time in Maryland's history for manufacturing. As Mike mentioned, we started this journey about 3 or 4 years ago together when we created the work group. And in 4 years, we've now seen pilot program and now a mandated program where it's going to provide funding for Industry 4.0 manufacturers. That's historic. But in order for us to continue moving forward and moving your interest forward, having you being a part of that voice in Annapolis is so imperative. So whether it be through working with folks like Mike and Mike, or through your office delegate, or working with Kendrick and what he's doing on his phenomenal work, we're all a Venn diagram. We're all connected in some way. So the more collectiveness that we come together in one uniform voice, the better we're going to have those champions. We already have established some of them already clearly on all of the panels here. We just need to keep on growing that and helping each other grow those. So that can be done through a variety of ways, either through your personal connections that you already have established with the General Assembly, or working with either the membership of being a member of MiHUB or a Chamber of Commerce or MEP or RMI. And sometimes it does, a little self-promotion here, but it sometimes does require lobbyists, just much as, you need a realtor to sell a house or you need a lawyer to create a will. You do need that additional help to help access those relationships, to help move those bills forward. So take the opportunity on this call to work with all of us and helping you be, that champion and that voice for industry and manufacturing in Annapolis. I just would also like to say too quickly that all of us have known over the period of time working in Annapolis that much like a sales pitch, you have to know your audience. And sometimes with this, particularly this new administration and knowing the leaderships of changes, it's going to take a little bit of time for knowing who our audience is. But I think the transition team report that Governor Moore has issued a month ago is reflective that there is some uniformity on what he's trying to do and his goals and what we're aligning to do with manufacturing, entrepreneurship, and startups that Kendrick's doing. So I think if we continue to help re-encourage that message through his report and what we're doing together, I think we should have some great future ahead of us. And I just want to make one last point to Kendrick. Really appreciate the work you did on your legislation this year. We helped work with you with another client of ours. Just really excited to see that you're basically taking STEAM, or I should say STEM, but applying it into STEAM in a lot of ways. And so, taking music or arts to be a part of hopefully your business plan, I think will also be another connection with a lot of legislators in Annapolis. And I think that will resonate just as much as you're currently doing right now. So happy to help work with you as well next year.
Richard, thank you. Now, Richard, I got to give you an opportunity real quick. How does someone reach you?
Yes, so you can reach me. Again, the firm that I work for is Percy Public Affairs. So it's Percy Public Affairs. That's our website. But what I can do for you, Scott, in the chat, I will put my contact information below.
All right, and I will share that with the audience. There will be correspondence that will come out after this event, and there are a number of folks who've asked a few questions. We'll try to make sure we get back to everybody. Mike Kelleher, a quick wrap up. I got to get you to 60 seconds. It was the lobbyist in Rich that took us a little longer than 60 seconds, but it's okay.
We know those lobbyists are long-winded. So, I think it's really that call to action, right? And it's the grassroots effort, and we need everybody's assistance with it. Kendrick, I thought you said it really well, where there's a difference between advocacy and lobbying. And I think we're all responsible for advocating for manufacturing and advocating for opportunities, whether they be for education or training or financial assistance or just the opportunity for us to grow our industry. And I think it's on all of us to do the advocacy, and then let us engage the lobbyists where we need to make the most impact. So we're at a crossroads, right? Both in the state of Maryland and federally, manufacturing is important right now. Everybody's talking about it. We've got 2 administrations talking about it. There's funding coming into it, and Maryland is really positioned well with our firms and our technology that we have and the resources and the knowledge that we have to take advantage of that. And so it's on us to make sure that we are advocating for our industry and that we're recruiting those champions that are going to support us.
But thank you, Mike. And how do we reach you?
I dropped my contact in the chat. But again, you can visit the Maryland MEP website, which is www.mdmep.org. I would encourage everybody to go there. We've got some great RMI MEP events that are upcoming. We've got an energy summit, a golf outing, and a number of other things that I think could really support the community. So I'll drop that in the chat as well, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And once again, we will share that with the audience. Mike Galiazzo.
I want to end by letting people know why this House Bill 4.0 passed. It was introduced by Delegate Lily Chi of Montgomery County. My good friend, Delegate Scott Phillips, was one of the sponsors of the bill. Delegate Atterbury, the Ways and Means Committee, if it hadn't been for her leadership, it would not have gotten out of the committee. And over on the Senate side, it was Senator Jim Rosapep introduced companion bill. The House bill went through the Senate Finance Committee, thanks to Senator Guy Gazzoni. But in particular, I want to thank the Speaker, Adrian Jones, who I know helped us knock this bill out of the park, and also to Senate President Bill Ferguson, who was aware that manufacturing needed this bill, and he helped.
But thank you, Mike. And we'll make sure they hear this recording so they'll remember us when we come back next year.
Thank you.
Why don't you give us our last word, and then I'm going to wrap up very quickly.
Wonderful. I mean, I think Richard, Mike, you hit it right on the nail. So I'll just kind of echo some of those things in the way I can say it. It starts with the relationships. So be intentional about the relationships, be intentional about who champions the things that you are concerned for, and then really understand that when there is a elected official, they mean public servant. So they work for their constituents. And so when you're intentional about my vote does count, that actually does have power. And then when you can actually support them financially as well and show up, that adds value. And so I think with adding value to build that relationship so that we could build capacity, it really helps when you want some legislation to change issue. And so I'll digress with saying, finally, focus on the relationships, being intentional about the relationships, and find that champion and champions for whatever issue that you desire to see change.
Kendrick, thank you very much. And thank everyone, all of our panelists, for participating today and sharing extremely important information with our audience. I want to share a couple of things. One, I want to say one of my colleagues from New York, Manhattan, is participating with us today, Roxanne Nielsen. And their center, the MBDA Manhattan Center, will be doing a how to use Chat GPT for your business on May the 11th. We will include that in the information that goes out to our guests today. I also will encourage you to please respond to the survey. You will get that at the end of the webinar. And last, I want to remind folks that the MBDA Advanced Manufacturing Center will be hosting its Minority Made Symposium on May the 25th. We're going to do this a little different this year, so just hold the date. It will be more of a professional development, networking, hopefully a fun afternoon. We're moving it to the afternoon, but please hold that date. Mike Galiazzo and Mike Kelleher mentioned the RMI MEP golf outing, which will be coming up soon. I want to say May the 11th. Is that right, gentlemen? On May the 11th. So put that date on your calendar. We look forward to seeing you out there. And just look at our page, the MBDA, the Baltimore MBDA.com website, and the MiHUBCoop.com website. That's MiHUBCoop.com. Thank you all very much for joining us for another informative MiHUB Monday. We'll see you again in June. And if you have any questions, you can always reach us at info@mihubcoop.com. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your afternoon.